Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, and I guess today's weren't particularly informative, they were more of a little insight into my own life, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And there is no other current event other than Rich Piana right now, let's just be honest. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And it's interesting because, you know, we had one of Rich's friends come forward and say, you know what, he's okay, his toxicology's fine, the doctor said his health is fine, there were no drugs involved, blah, blah, blah. And this is someone who's a personal friend of his, and you know what? For all we know, that's just PR cleanup, because just because someone's your personal friend or has been your friend in the past doesn't mean they're telling the truth about you, whether it's a good or a bad thing. That doesn't hold weight of evidence compared to what we know the police have reported. All right, we've got multiple news agencies now who are reporting quite the opposite. So his personal friend probably doesn't hold as much credence as what the police reports say. And here's where our problem starts. First of all, now that it looks like he is probably going to pull through, probably going to make it, not saying there won't be permanent issues with him from here, we've got a lot of potential legal problems to deal with. Now people say, what? Because see, that's how it works in the real world, guys. When the police and the ambulances show up, when you drug overdose and they find drugs all in your house that aren't illegal for you to possess, guess what? You don't get off a free pass. You don't get like a free pass from the cops and they say, well, you learned your lesson. We're just going to let this slide. Problem is the police found multiple types of drugs in his home. We're going to get to a lot of the problems in the bodybuilding world and polydrug abuse and all that in a minute. But first of all, his girlfriend Chantel admitted to the police that he previously has had an opiate problem. In fact, there are rumors circulating that his ex Sarah may have discussed this with certain people that might be released at a later date. Now, there's nothing official there. That's only rumors. But this actual topic is something kind of being discussed in the background right now of his previous drug abuse and what drugs he's abused, what party drugs, is going to be a possible topic. And when we're talking recent, we're talking within the last year. And you know what? That's not unusual. I mean, let's be honest here. He's in the bodybuilding world. Jerry Ward has talked about all of that, how bodybuilders party with lots of drugs. It's part of the bodybuilding scene, and it's definitely part of the bodybuilding scene out on the West Coast where he lives. This isn't abnormal at all. It's perfectly normal within that community. It's not a health-oriented community. It is a party and drug abuse community. Bodybuilding is not healthy. Nothing to do with health or fitness. And it has a massive party scene. So that's not really a surprise there. So we've got all of that, and she admitted that. Well, the problem is that the police and the medics found something, unidentified white powder, on a table near him, an unidentified pile of white powder with a credit card and a straw by it. Now, that might have just been a pre-workout. He might have been snorting some pre-workout. That's possible. You know what? It could have been baby powder. It's possible. We don't know because they haven't identified what it is. It was an unidentified powder. Well, I can assure you that that's been confiscated and it's going to be tested at a lab. If it turns out that that was an illegal drug, whether it's cocaine or he was snorting Adderall, we don't know. But if it was a drug that he's not legally supposed to be in possession of, he's not going to be able to use the excuse, it wasn't mine. He was found unconscious, suspected drug overdose, and the drug found close to him in a usable form, sitting there ready to be used as if it had been used. Someone was using it. Well, the only possible people are he and his girlfriend, and she didn't have enough sense to clean it up while she's waiting on the paramedics to get there. See the problem there? Somebody is probably being charged with possession. Now, since that was a user amount and possible first-time offense, we don't know their criminal histories. This is California. They'll go pretty light on them. I mean, let's be honest. Reasonably wealthy person, possession of a user amount of cocaine in a state like California, he probably won't get any jail time for that. Especially a guy with money. Do we know that for certain? No, but he probably won't. I think that's reasonable. Might get even a plea bargain, pay a fine, have to go to rehab. So we've got all of this to deal with. Then what do we have? They found 20 bottles of testosterone. Now, again, California, we don't know what they might charge him with for that. But in his home, responding to a medical emergency, a self-admitted steroid user has more than what would be considered user amounts on hand immediately available. Now, a lot of people would say, well, he uses really, really large amounts. You know, that would also be like trying to use the excuse of you get caught with half a brick of cocaine of saying you use a whole lot of cocaine. Here's your problem. Most people, normal users, cycle of testosterone, that bottle's going to last 5 weeks. Yeah, you guys see where this is going. That's 100 weeks. That's a 2-year supply. Right there on hand, they found in one little location. All right, they didn't search the guy's entire house. You need to understand, he has a really big house. They didn't get a warrant to search his whole house. If they found 20 bottles of testosterone in his home, they probably only found what was immediately right there available, easy access. He has a really big house. This wasn't put away in storage. Now, that is potential intent to distribute. Do we know they're going to charge a rich guy in California with that, who can afford, you know, a couple $100,000 for lawyers? Maybe not. We don't know. We don't know what they're going to charge him with. But realistically, could the police at that point pursue, not personal amount, but intent to distribute? Again, we're talking about 20 bottles of testosterone. Most test bottles like that, we don't know, could have been test 300, test 400. 250 is normal. It's 2.5 grams a bottle. Even a relatively heavy user, a gram a week, not even 500 like what I was talking about. 2.5 weeks. You're talking about a 1-year supply. Not put away in storage, immediately available. 1-year supply for a heavy user. Yeah, there could be serious legal consequences here because they've already got other stuff. Well, you've got possession of a narcotic potentially, because we don't know what that powder was. A reasonable person might conclude, based upon the description, that it could be cocaine. Doesn't mean that it was. People snort other things. Most likely. Dealer amounts of testosterone. And they've got the potential for self-harm. He's probably going to have to go through a psychological evaluation. You have a person who right there overdosed on a drug, had to be admitted to the ICU for it, spent days in the ICU, found in possession of large amounts of drugs. Yeah, he's going to get a psychological eval. So they're going to have that to deal with too. This is someone who a psychologist might look at and say, well, give an assessment to a judge. A judge might make certain rulings based upon that also, his psychological state. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here, and it's not just the health issues now. Now there's all the legal consequences that he's going to wake up out of this coma to. And this kind of comes back to the whole problem with this whole bodybuilding lifestyle. The polydrug abuse, all the craziness that goes on with it. You know, it's playing with fire on multiple levels. It's like I told you guys on here a long time ago. This is one reason I'm really, really against people mixing street drugs, party drugs, with their anabolics. I lost a friend this way. Alright, a friend of mine died doing this shit. People can say, oh, I mean, it's not that bad. Well, he was stacking Tren, Winstrol, Clen, and he was doing a bump of coke before every workout. He was using cocaine as a pre-workout while cutting on Tren and Clen. All right, he had a heart attack. And this same guy had just told me before, you know, when he was doing bumps of coke before he trains. And I mean, I've known powerlifters who do the same thing. I've got bros out there who do coke before they do lifts and competition and powerlifting meets. It's out there. But the thing is, he was always like, well, a little cocaine never killed anyone. Well, a lot of cocaine stacked with a lot of Tren and a lot of Clen killed him. And there's your problem with it. It's stacking all these drugs, and that's the problem we run into. That's one of the biggest problems we see in the gear world. You know, guys go to gear, you know, they start injecting gear. Not a big deal. They're already used to using drugs. They're already used to penning stuff. It's not a big jump to go, you know what? What's wrong with using little street drugs to get high? What's wrong with using little street drugs to help with my energy? What's wrong with using little street drugs to help with my cut? See the problem here, guys? And people are like, well, not that many do it. Yeah, a ton of guys do. The whole bodybuilding world does it. All right, your bodybuilding heroes, if you follow bodybuilding, they do that. And you got plenty of them who've admitted to it. Even Jerry Ward's talked about it in detail because he runs in these circles. Of all his previous drug abuse was related to the bodybuilding world. I say previous loosely. You have the polydrug abuse. You have the risks of all of it. You just saw Rich go down, mixing street drugs. Because that is what happened. We know from his girlfriend's admission, he's at least historically had a drug abuse problem. Other people have said that. They found a drug right there that is most likely directly related to his overdose and pass out and hitting his head. You have all of this cocktails of drugs people do. You're risking death. And then here's the other kicker. You have all these drugs on hand. You have too many different drugs in your possession. You're getting them from too many different places. All right? There are potential legal consequences to that also. It's not just health risk. You know, if a person is using 5 or 6 different drugs that they have to get from 5 or 6 different sources, their odds of getting caught start mounting. The more different illegal drugs they have in their possession, the worse things are going to be if they do get popped. You know, the whole lifestyle carries such a massive risk, and that risk just escalates once the polydrug abuse comes into the mix. And I mean, I've seen this stuff happen. I've watched it happen. I've seen friends of mine go down from this stuff. This is real, and that is what is being promoted. A lot of these YouTube heroes in the fitness world, this is the lifestyle that they live. This is the people who people are looking up to, being entertained by, getting advice from. Think this through, because some of these guys are dropping dead. Others are getting arrested. There's been legal stuff involved with all of this. There have been major health problems involved with all this. It's just the tip of the iceberg, guys. You don't think everyone who's been involved with that WFN scandal in some way, you don't think they're being watched by the feds now? You don't think Rashid, Lobliner, all those guys are now being watched by the feds? They all have to have drugs to do what they do. They can't run their businesses without them. Alright? They will be watched by the DEA because of this, even if they didn't pop them with anything now. They're all going to be watched. The whole community around them is being watched now. They've drawn heat onto themselves with this fiasco. We've got these mounting health problems. We've got C.T. Fletcher dying. We have Rich just had this happen. Alright, this whole community, this whole bodybuilding community on YouTube, this whole industry is a big-ass house of cards. And it's people trying to promote their lifestyle to everyone else, and others looking up to it and wanting to get involved. Don't get involved. This is a house of cards about to collapse in on itself. Don't get sucked into it. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.